Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting history. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. Welcome to Wayback Wednesday. We've got kind of a funny story today. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. I had a few giggles myself. The government, the Senate, silly people. Are you ready? Today's shout out of picking pogo rice. Ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friends. Let's see who it is today. I forgot to set it because I'm a genius. Alright, start. Alright, there we go. We got She Stole, we got Really Haunted, One Busy, Cable, Hillbillies, Rock, Distracted, Kenny and Debbie, Derek, Hiking Ontario, Gypsy, Reese, JB, Donna, Jacob, Lainey, My Linda, Anthony, Carter, Bluegrass, Right Touch, let's see, Sylvia, Cable, 755, Frugal, Miss T, Contact, let's see, there's Ruick, at least that's how I pronounce it, TNT, Jared, Tramps, Ace Base, Ohio, I, Lucy. Oh, it looks like Jared won this time. You know, I just did the whole shout out without recording it, right? There are days where I question my brain power. Let's try this again. This time with, recording. Jared King TV, Appalachian Stories and Beyond. And basically, Jared shares stories of the Appalachian Mountains, olden days, some paranormal stories, some scary stories, lots of different kinds of stories. Some of them are real, some of them are not. So if you're interested in Appalachian Mountains, stories of the olden days, a little bit of history, maybe a little bit paranormal, check it out. Like, share, comment, have a good day. Alright, now tell us a story.
Alright, well, I'm going to give a quick shout out to my wifey for coming up with these interesting ideas for our Wayback Wednesdays. Usually a couple days before, she'll give me about 10 to 20 items, and I'll scope through them, see if any of them, give me a vibe that, this might be interesting to pass along to you folks. Something to play with in the history books. Sometimes they're good ideas, some of them are kind of short, and so I want to make sure you guys, we don't get any money for it, get your money's worth off my ranting. Now, there was an interesting tidbit that came up, and it dates back to pre-Civil War. There's an episode in 1856 during the Bleeding Kansas crisis. Sumner would denounce the Kansas-Nebraska Act in his Crime Against Kansas speech delivered on May 19th and May 20th. And this long speech argued for the immediate admission of Kansas as a free state and went on to denounce the slave power, the slave owners and their political power, noting, "Not any common lust for power did this uncommon tragedy have in its origin. It is the rape of Virginia territory, compelling it to the hateful embrace of slavery, and it may be clearly traced to a depraved desire for a new slave state, hideous offspring of such a crime, in the hope that adding to the power of slavery in the national government." Well, Sumner's rhetoric was largely directed at the authors of the act, Senators Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois and Andrew Butler of South Carolina. Now, regarding Butler, Sumner said, The senator from South Carolina has read many books of chivalry and believes himself a chivalrous knight with sentiments of honor and courage. Of course, he has chosen a mistress whom he has made his vows, and who, though ugly to others, is always lovely to him, though polluted in the sight of the world, is chaste in his sight. I mean the harlot, slavery. For her, his tongue is always profuse in words. Let her be impeached in character, or any proposition made to shut her out from the extension of her wantonness, and no extravagance of manner, of hardihood, of assertion is too great for this senator.
Oh my goodness, that's
I know,
a
slam him. The frenzy of Don Quixote in behalf of his wench, Dulcinea del Toboso, is all surpassed.
Oh my goodness, he just laid into that lady.
Good grief.
What did she do?
Slavery is just an evil. Now, Saunders would also mock Butler's speaking ability, which had been impeded by a recent stroke. Ouch. He touches nothing which he does not disfigure with error, sometimes of principle, sometimes of fact. He cannot open his mouth, but out there flies a blunder. Now, according to Manshashina, Sumner had been ridiculed and insulted by both Douglas and Butler for his opposition to the fugitive slave law and the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which Butler crudely race-baiting Sumner by making sexual allegations to black women, like many slaveholders who accused abolitionists of promoting interracial marriage. Well, sexually charged accusations were also part of the abolitionist lexicon. William James Hoffer states that it is also important to note that sexual imagery that recurred throughout Sumner's oration, which was neither accidental nor without precedent. Abolitionists routinely accused slaveholders of maintaining slavery so they could engage in forcible sexual relations with their slaves.
I can see that on some people's phones.
Yeah. Douglas said during his speech, "This blank fool is going to get himself killed by some other blank fool." Now, Representative Preston Brooks, Butler's first cousin once removed, was infuriated. He later said that he intended to challenge Sumner to a duel and consulted fellow South Carolina Representative Lawrence M. Keat on dueling etiquette. Keat told him that dueling was for gentlemen of equal social standing, and that Sumner was no better than a drunkard because of the supposedly coarse language he'd used during his speech. Brooks said that he concluded that since Sumner was no gentleman, he did not merit honorable treatment. To Keat and Brooks, it was more appropriate to humiliate Sumner by beating him with a cane in a public setting. Gee, somebody took him at his word. Now, 2 days later, afternoon, May 22nd, 1856, Brooks entered the Senate chamber with Keat and another ally, Representative Henry A. Edmondson of Virginia. They waited for the galleries to clear, being particularly concerned there were no ladies present to witness what Brooks intended to do. He confronted Sumner as he sat writing at his desk in the almost empty Senate chamber. "Mr. Sumner, I have read your speech twice over carefully. It is a libel on South Carolina and Mr. Butler, who is a relative of mine." Brooks calmly announced in a low voice as Sumner began to stand up. Brooks beat him severely on the head before he could reach his feet, using a thick gutta percha cane with a gold head. The force of the blow so shocked Sumner that he lost his sight immediately. "I no longer saw my assailant nor any other person or object in the room. What I did afterwards was done almost unconsciously, acting under the instinct of self-defense," he recalled later. Sumner was knocked down and trapped under the heavy desk, which was bolted to the floor. His chair, which was pulled up to the desk, moved back and forth on a track. Sumner either could not or did not think to slide his chair back to escape, so it pinned him under the desk. Brooks continued to strike Sumner until Sumner rose to his feet and ripped the desk from the floor in an effort to get away from Brooks. By that time, Sumner was blinded by his own blood. He staggered up the aisle and, arms outstretched, vainly attempted to defend himself, but that made him an even larger and easier target for Brooks, who continued to beat him across the head, face, and shoulders to the full extent of my power. Brooks did not stop when his cane snapped. He continued thrashing Sumner with the piece he held in the gold head. Sumner stumbled and reeled at the end of the attack, convulsively saying, "Oh, Lord," he gasped. "Oh, oh." Sumner would collapse unconscious, though shortly before he succumbed, he bellowed like a calf, according to Brooks. Brooks grabbed the falling Sumner, held him up by the lapel with one hand, and continued to lash out at him with the cane in the other. Now, several other senators and representatives attempted to help Sumner, but they were blocked by Edmondson, who yelled at the spectators to leave Brooks and Sumner alone. And Kent, who had brandished his own cane and pistol, shouted, "Let them be, and let them alone, goddamn you, all of them, let them alone." Well, Senator John J. Crittenden attempted to intervene and pleaded with Brooks not to kill Sumner. Senator Robert Toombs then interceded for Crittenden, telling Kent not to attack someone who was not a party to the dispute, though Toombs also indicated later that he had no issue with Brooks beating Sumner, and in fact approved of it.
I approve of this action.
Well, Representatives Ambrose S. Murray and Edwin B. Morgan were finally able to interview and restrain Brooks, at which point he quietly left the chamber. Murray obtained the aid of the Senate page and the Sergeant-at-Arms, Dunning R. McNair. As Sumner regained consciousness, they were able to assist him and walk him to a cloakroom. Sumner received first aid and medical attention, including several stitches. With the aid of Nathaniel P. Banks, the Speaker of the House, and Senator Henry Wilson, Sumner was able to travel by carriage to his lodgings, where he received further medical treatment. Brooks also required medical attention before leaving the Capitol. He had hit himself above his right eye with one of his backswings. Book! The cane used was broken into several pieces, which he left on the blood-soaked floor of the Senate chamber. Some, including the cane's gold head, were recovered by Edmondson, who gave the portion with the head to Adam John Glossbrenner, the House Sergeant-at-Arms. This portion of the cane eventually wound up at the Old State House Museum in Boston, and it was worked to smooth the edges and finish and then put on display. Southern lawmakers made rings out of the other pieces that Edmondson recovered on the Senate floor, which they wore on neck chains to show their solidarity with Brooks, who boasted, "The pieces of my cane are begged for as sacred relics."
These are sacred pieces of cane.
We also have a picture of what the cane looked like, and that would hurt like a mother. Now, the episode revealed the polarization of America, which now reached the floor of the Senate. Sumner became a martyr to the North and Brooks a hero in the South. Northerners were outraged. The Cincinnati Gazette said the South could not tolerate free speech anywhere and would stifle it in Washington with the bludgeon and the Bowie knife. And now they are trying to stifle it in Kansas by massacre and murder. William Cullen Bryant of the New York Evening Post asked, "Has it come to this that we must speak with bated breath in the presence of the Southern masters? Are we to be chastised as they chastise their slaves? Are we too slaves for life, a target of their brutal blows, when we do not comport ourselves to please them?" Thousands attended rallies in support of Sumner in Boston, Albany, Cleveland, Detroit, New Haven, New York, and Providence. More than 1 million copies of Sumner's speech were distributed. Now, 2 weeks after the caning, Ralph Waldo Emerson described the divide as the incident represented. "I do not see how a barbarous community and a civilized community can constitute one state. I think we must get rid of slavery or we must get rid of freedom." Conversely, Brooks was praised by Southern newspapers. The Richmond Enquirer editorialized that Sumner should be caned every morning, praising the attack as good in conception, better in execution, and best in all consequences, and denounced these vulgar abolitionists of the Senate who have been suffered to run too long without collars. They must be lashed into submission. Sumner sent Brooks hundreds of new canes in endorsement for the assault, and one was described, "Hit him again." Now, Massachusetts Representative Anson Burlingame publicly humiliated Brooks by challenging Burlingame into a duel, only to set conditions designed to intimidate Brooks into backing down. As the challenging party, Burlingame, who is a crack shot, had the choice of weapons and dueling ground. He selected rifles on the Canadian side of the Niagara Falls, where the U.S. anti-dueling laws would not apply. Brooks withdrew the challenge, claiming he did not want to expose himself to the risk of violence by traveling through northern states to get to Niagara Falls. Senator Henry Wilson, Sumner's colleague from Massachusetts, called the beatings by Brooks a brutal, murderous, and cowardly, and in response, Brooks challenged Wilson to a duel. Wilson declined, saying he could not legally or personally participate by calling dueling the lingering relic of a barbarous civilization, a reference to a rumor that Brooks might attack him in the Senate. Wilson told the press, "I have sought no controversy, and I seek none, but I shall go where duty requires, uninfluenced by threats of any kind." Wilson continued to perform his Senate duties, and Brooks did not make good on his threat. The Southerners mocked Sumner, claiming he was faking his injuries. They argued that the cane Brooks used was not heavy enough to inflict severe injuries. They also claimed that Brooks had not hit Sumner more than a few times, and had not hit him hard enough to cause any serious health concerns. In fact, Sumner suffered head trauma that caused him chronic, debilitating pain for the rest of his life, and symptoms consistent with what is now known as traumatic brain injury, TBI, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
I can see that.
Yeah. He spent 3 years convalescing before returning to his Senate seat. Massachusetts pointedly did not replace him and left his empty desk in the Senate as a visible reminder of the incident. The state legislature would re-elect him in 1857, even though he was unable to retake his seat until 1859. Now, Brooks claimed he had not intended to kill Sumner, or else he would have used a different weapon. In his speech to the House defending his actions, Brooks stated that he meant no disrespect to the Senate of the United States or the House by his attack on Sumner. Brooks was arrested for assault. He was tried in the District of Columbia court, convicted, and fined $300, equivalent to $10,170 in 2023, but received no prison sentence. A motion for Brooks's expulsion from the House failed, but he resigned in July 15th in order to permit his constituents to ratify or condemn his conduct in a special election. They approved. Brooks was quietly returned to office after the August 1st vote, and then re-elected to a new term of office in 1856.
Because, why not? Well, you can trust him not to beat another person.
Yeah, but he also died of croup before his new term could begin.
Oh, well.
Now, Kit was censured by the House. He resigned in protest, but his constituents ratified his conduct with an overwhelming re-electing him to his seat within a month. In 1858, he attempted to choke Representative Galusha A. Grow of Pennsylvania for calling him a Negro driver during an argument on the House floor.
Oh, he's a violent boy, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. An effort to censure Edmondson failed to obtain a majority of votes in the House, and historian William Ginnup has concluded that Brooks's assault was of critical importance in transforming the struggling Republican Party into a major political force. In the 1856 elections, the new Republican Party made gains by use of the twin messages of Bleeding Kansas and Bleeding Sumner, because both events served to paint pro-slavery Democrats as extremists. Though the Democrats won the presidential election and increased their majority in the House because of the 3/5 compromise giving Democrats an advantage, Republicans made major gains in elections for the state legislatures, which enabled them to make gains in the U.S. Senate elections because senators were chosen by the state legislatures. The violence in Kansas and the beating Sumner helped the Republicans coalesce and cohere as a party, which set the stage for their victory in the 1860 presidential election. Lincoln. Now, during the 1856 lame duck session of Congress, Brooks made a speech calling for the admission of Kansas, even with the Constitution rejecting slavery. His conciliatory tone impressed Northerners and disappointed the slavery supporters. But that was the primary case known as Congressman versus Congressman, caning episode. But fun little thing that basically showed exactly how polarized things could get before a Civil War.
I kind of wish that our Congress was that exciting.
Yeah, it would definitely make for good headlines. Although, as old as our farts are, caning would probably kill somebody.
How old were they when this happened? Does it say? I didn't catch that part if you said it.
I didn't see it, but let me dig up their names.
Because I mentioned they had to be in their 50s or 60s to run, don't they?
I think so. Let's see.
Most congressmen.
Charles Sumner, he would have been 45.
Oh.
So
Wow.
he wasn't that old.
He's my age, so. Of Cool beans.
Yeah, and then Sumner, or I should say Brooks. Let's see, 18, 19. So he was even younger.
Wow.
So yeah, they were old. I mean, you think about now guys like Biden, who's in his 80s, or Pelosi, who I
guess
think
most of ours are up there in the 70s or 80s.
Well, yeah, and see, that's the thing that I do truly have to chuckle at, is that our most recent generation wanted somebody younger in as president, and because Trump hurt people's feelings, they put in the oldest guy as president, which I'm like going, seriously? But, you know, we'll see what happens when November comes around. So, folks, it's been fun. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.